Kansas City Royals are coming to town. 1-2 facing the Baltimore Orioles. They got a massive win today, 11-0 to get on the board. They took the final game of the series against the Minnesota Twins, and a big reason, well, not a big reason, it was Salvador Perez 1, Bobby Witt Jr. 2. Salvador Perez, if you guys forget, he's now playing a little bit more first, but still one of the better bats, especially at the catching position, but specifically on the Royals. And Bobby Witt Jr. Actually going to do a Know Your Foe breakdown of Bobby Witt Jr. in the future. We have a bunch of those that are coming out so you guys can learn some of the best bats around the league. But Bobby Witt Jr. was actually, correct me if I'm wrong, Zach, he was the pick after Adley in 2019.
Yep.
And the Orioles made the right choice, but guess what? The Kansas City Royals also made the right choice with who they selected because the dude's an absolute stud. He was, I believe, a double shy of the cycle today.
Mm-hmm.
And he is so fun to watch, such a young, talented player. And it should be an interesting series. Kansas City's got a lot of aspirations, guys. They really, really do. And especially, Zach, doesn't it feel like the AL Central is a little bit more wide open?
Yeah. I mean, the AL Central is such an interesting division because it seems like every team has a group of guys where you're like, man, if they put it together, they can go win the division. But every team obviously has their flaws, and it's probably seen as the weakest division, especially in the American League at the moment. So it is one of those divisions where if the Royals get hot, if Perez keeps doing what he's been doing his whole career, you have Bobby Witt Jr. I don't even want to say taking that next step because, man, he's already at superstar level. But you have those guys. You have Reagans, the lefty that we're going to talk about in a little bit, faces off against Corbin Burns on Wednesday. That'll be electric. They got talent. I love Melendez.
Yeah,
started off as a catcher and now playing the outfield. Talk about not something easy to learn, but he's out there still hitting well while doing that. It's a good team. They have a decent lineup, but there are a few things there. It's going to be a good series.
Yeah. So, and for the touch of and Melendez, actually, I played against him in high A, and I remember him catching, and he was one of their high picks, high school kid trying to figure it out. And he's starting to kind of find a role here.
Yeah.
They're young, and they spent a lot of money in free agency this year. I saw Eddie talked about that right now. They spent a ton of money in free agency this year. And, kind of not a why not, but they're in this flux where they've been picking high and they haven't seen the success. And you feel like at some point you got to make a jump. And for the most part, the AL Central is not as strong, and that's documented. It's not as strong as some of the other divisions. So why not go make a run out of it? Let's talk to you about what's going to happen here in game one, by the way. And Tori, we saw about, wow, I didn't catch what happened to the Astros. We will dive around Major League Baseball on the weekend here for a second. Because, the Astros, woof. Orioles fans are kind of pissed because the team that they were playing was the Yankees. The Yankees came back 3 times. But let's talk about this first game with the Orioles and Royals, which will be a 6:35 start tomorrow. Michael Wacha on the mound for the Kansas City Royals. And Big Dean Kremer is on the mound for the Baltimore Orioles, making his 2024 debut. And to give people context on Michael Wacha last year, he had a 3.22 ERA and actually had a really good year for the San Diego Padres. 14-4 record, 134 innings, 113 hits, 124 strikeouts. So just a little bit under 1 strikeout an inning, but he's been consistent the last couple of years, actually, after a rough 2021. And Dean is trying to brush away the early struggles of the early months that he had like last year. And kind of, to be honest, I think the Dean's ready to get off to a good start this year, Zach.
Yeah, I think Dean's especially, like we said with all these guys, especially after how last year ended, I think every single one of them just wants to get back on the horse, and they just want to get back in that rhythm again and get on that rotation and just competing with each other. That's the biggest thing that I've loved so far that we've heard from guys like Corbin Burns and Grayson Rodriguez was the competition they have with each other. And it is a friendly competition, but it's still competition. Each player, each pitcher wants to do better than the pitcher before. And Grayson talked about how Corbin Burns was even chirping him a little bit in the dugout after Grayson's start, saying, both went 6 innings. You had the 1 run. I gave up the 1 run, but Corbin was like, I got 11 Ks. You only had 9. So it's a little friendly competition. Grayson said it fires him up. And I think Dean's going to be no different. We've seen Dean when he's on. Dean's one of the better pitchers in this league. And I think this year I'm really excited for how, he's going to do.
Yeah, I think Dean can step up to any of the best lineups. I think for Dean, the specific thing, and he knows this, is just continuing to build off those moments where you see him go, damn, you can be lights out. It's a consistency factor for all of it. And for Dean last year, and this is one thing, I'm going to knock on wood, let's have clean first innings.
Yeah, I was just going to say no first inning home runs, Dean. It's okay.
You know what? I do love chirping him for that too. That's one of my favorite things of just being like, hey, Dean, the first inning. What the hell's up with that? But then Dean would be like, yeah, I know. What the hell? But that's what I love about Dean too, is that he's, and I guess I can joke with him about it more because I know him on that personal level, but he's aware of what he needs to do. And he's a very personable guy. And I think that's what it's a guy you want to root for. So I think Dean, it's a really good opportunity to get the pitch at home, comfortable, hopefully get in a rhythm. And you're right. I think the other pitchers around you being like, hey, we all won 6 innings. What you going to do next? I think that's going to be interesting. I think, Brad, you have a interesting little breakdown for Dean.
Yeah, it was actually you breaking him down. So I just wanted to show this real quick so that here we go.
Dean Kremer's going to throw an excellent pitch right here. Dean, friend of the program, great hair. You know what we might need to get? We might need to get a big Dean shirt, but then emphasize with the D on Dean Kremer. Stud pitcher, by the way. But what you're going to see right there, see this ball cutting in? It's like a cutter slider that Dean has. We saw Casas do some damage on some pitches earlier there, right? It looks like a good spot. That's a happy place for lefties. Low and in, you can drive the baseball out of the yard. Well, Casas feels.
There you go.
Yeah, so what happens there in that video, by the way, Dean's cutter comes right across the plate. Casas misses it. And like Dean's stuff is really stinking good. His problem is that he'll leave a pitch over the plate, especially if he gets up in the count. And when you leave a hittable pitch with 2 strikes in the over the plate, and there's good hitters out there, they're going to make you pay for your mistakes. But Dean, it's great. And we've seen the importance of a cutter. And I'm really curious because the Orioles have Corbin Burns, who has, in my opinion, the best cutter in baseball right now. You have another pitcher in Dean. When he does it right, it's such a dangerous pitch. And personally, seeing it up close and personal as his teammate, it's not fun. It's not fun when he throws it correctly. But if he doesn't get the cut on it, and it kind of goes over the middle, almost like a I'm not going to say like a hanging slider, or like almost like people say a quote unquote BP fastball that just doesn't break, and it can be 91 down the middle, then you're going to be in some trouble. But Dean Kremer, one of my favorite guys and one of my best teammates. So I'm really excited to see what he can do. Moving into game 2, we're going to see the first action of Cole Irvin versus Alec Marsh, right-handed pitcher. Right-handed pitcher, 6'2", 220. And Cole Irvin, I think the biggest thing, I think what I'm excited about in this is we get to see the Cole Irvin, what's going to happen for him leaving spring training. Because the biggest thing we heard was velo's up, more movement on his ball. And now, is it going to translate to the regular season?
Yeah, talk about a guy, especially the first, 3 appearances in spring training was all the rave in Baltimore was about how Cole Irvin looks like a different pitcher. Cole Irvin's looking like the pitcher that you acquired last year, or I guess the offseason before, from Oakland, saying, hey, this guy can go help us win games. This guy can be a 4 or 5 in our rotation, help us win. And I'm excited. Like you said, velo's supposedly up, movement's up. And if Cole is working with confidence, we've talked about following up these other pitchers. When you get these guys confident and they get rolling, I am so excited to see what Cole Irvin can do against we've talked about this with the Angels. After you probably get through 4 guys for the Royals, it is not the deepest lineup. So I do expect Cole Irvin to do well, and I'm excited to see how he handles the first game, back into the season. If the velo stays up, because a lot of times we've talked about this before, you're just so hyped up, your first few starts of spring training, of opening day, and, the velo can kind of tick up 1 or 2 times. We saw that first start with Jack Flaherty with the Orioles last year, hit, I think, 96 when he hadn't hit above 94 all year. So I'm interested to see how the velo looks, how the movement looks, and just how he goes up against this Royals lineup.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that people forget Cole Irvin was signed as a guy that was very consistent the previous 2 seasons. What I mean by that, he went 178 plus in the 2 previous years. He had a 4.24 ERA 1 year, 3.98 the other, and he just was able to go out there and give you consistency. He had over 30 starts in those 2 years. But last year obviously didn't go according to plan, and that was a big reset. And sometimes when you have those big, is it adverse is the correct word?
Yeah.
Just when shit hits the fan. How about
adversity.
That?
Well, adversity.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, obviously adversity, but is it adverse the word? Is that doesn't sound as good,
no,
right?
It doesn't sound as good.
How about when shit hits the fan?
I like that better.
I don't really care though, but yeah, when shit hits the fan, how do you respond? And I think Cole Irvin had a great attitude. He understood, and he really worked in the offseason. And the Orioles are going to need him in that spot right now because of what we just talked about. They have capable guys that are able to go out there and have success, but especially in the back end of your rotation, you want to see, especially he is that left-handed arm right now without John Means. So this is very important. I think Cole Irvin is up to the challenge, and hopefully the Orioles will have a good outing with that. And then the last pitching matchup of this week is going to be Cole Ragans versus Corbin Burns. I think that's the one that people are going, that's muy caliente, that's spicy. And muy caliente, it's very hot, is what at least what my Latin teammates taught me. So, I mean, I know you're excited about that, Zach, because both pitchers, look, they are fun to watch. And Orioles fans, if you just watch Corbin Burns on opening day, you were ecstatic about how that whole situation went.
Yeah, I think these are the games in baseball that you just love. 2 guys at the top of their game. Cole Ragans kind of making that step. Last year he's a young pitcher that is kind of trying to establish himself in that upper echelon of pitchers in Major League Baseball. Then you have a former Cy Young guy, Corbin Burns, coming in for his second start of the year. It really does have one of those feelings of just a great baseball game where it's 2 competitors that it should be a pitching duel. And I'm excited for that. I know, obviously, Orioles, we would love if the Orioles go out there, drop 15 runs on Ragans, and then it's like, oh, okay, they win 15-0. But when you have just 2 great pitchers going at it, that's exciting. It's going to be an early day game for baseball, hopefully pretty weather, and just should be a great time to watch 2 guys at the top of their game compete against each other and watch how they try to get these guys out on the opposing team. Corbin Burns versus Bobby Witt Jr. is going to be must-see television.
Yeah, I mean, Burns, you want the encore, and he's definitely up for the encore. But for Ragans to give him to understand how good he was when he went to Kansas City from Texas, okay? Once he got traded over, or is it trade when he came over, if I'm not mistaken, Zach? It was a trade that came over. 12 games started, and with the Kansas City Royals, he had a 2.64 ERA. This is the part that, if you're a fan, this is why we're saying we're excited about it. 71 innings, he punched out 89. Yeah. So he's a power pitcher, goes after them, and also 50 hits in 71 innings. You might think that's still a lot of hits, Ryan. That's well below 1 hidden inning. And when you actually sit down and think about the amount of strikeouts, over 1 strikeout an inning, under 1 hidden inning, typically those guys are pretty nasty, and everything backs it up. He doesn't walk a lot of guys either. 27 walks in 71 innings. So he is a power pitcher that can get outs, but also is not going to give a lot of free passes. And so for this Orioles lineup, it will be a nice challenge to see how they're able to combat a guy that is not used to giving free passes. Now, the Orioles, they made Sandoval, especially in game 1, work against the Angels. And Sandoval had the Orioles down. I did it in the other breakdown where I thought that was the difference in the game. They kept battling and battling. They put the ball in play. They did the little things to keep innings alive or keep a rally going, quote unquote. So that will be fun.